Salt stings the air, and somewhere beyond the black water, a white flash cuts through the fog, disappears, then returns on its own time. That is the hidden power of the lighthouse. It does not rush into the sea to prove itself, and still, every trembling deck searches for it. Chosen one, that is why people study you more than they admit. Not because you are loud or because you chase eyes, applause, or easy approval. They watch you because you remind them of something this world keeps trying to forget. Real guidance does not run after chaos. It holds its ground. It stays where truth placed it. And then, by simply being what it is, it changes outcomes far away. A lighthouse never moves toward ships. It stays fixed on the rock and lets the light do the work. Let that sink in. The very thing some people misunderstood about you, your stillness, your refusal to perform, your unwillingness to beg to be noticed, is the same thing that quietly makes others trust you. They may never say thank you. They may never even say your name in the room where your influence is being felt. But they know what happens when your steady presence is missing. They feel the difference immediately. And here is where it gets even deeper. Out there in total darkness, sailors do not need a speech from the shore. They need rhythm in the dark. Every one of these towers flashes in its own pattern, a timing so distinct it can be recognized when the coast itself cannot be seen. In the same way, beloved, there is a rhythm to you, a way you speak, a way you pause, a way you remain rooted on the rock when other people start drifting with every mood, every fear, every opinion. That pattern has become more recognizable than you realize. Some have mistaken your consistency for distance. Some have called your quiet authority cold. But they do not understand yet that calm weather is not what reveals the worth of a steadfast beam. And the reason they keep circling back to your light has everything to do with what happens when the storm finally rolls in. If this speaks to your spirit, subscribe and stay with me, because the next truth about the lighthouse explains why your life had to be built where others once fell apart. And that is why the next truth matters so much. This tower is never built in the soft, easy places. You will find it where the cliff edge tastes of salt, where wind slaps wet stone, where the ground feels uneven under your feet. It stands on the hard points of the coast, jagged rock, narrow headland, the very places that already proved dangerous. That is not an accident. It is raised where earlier vessels were thrown off course, where wood split, where metal scraped, where somebody once believed the way ahead was safe and discovered too late that it was not. Chosen one, hear me clearly. Your life carries that same holy pattern. You were not formed in comfort. You were positioned where confusion had already done damage. That is what people feel when they come near you, even if they cannot put it into words. Your steadiness has texture. It feels weathered, earned. There is something about a structure rooted on the rock that speaks without speaking. The paint may fade, the stairs may groan, the glass may rattle in hard wind, but the fact that it is still there tells its own story. In the same way, your presence carries evidence. You do not need to list what you survived. You do not need to explain every lonely season. The fact that you remain standing where others lost direction has already become a message. And yes, some people misread that message. They look at your boundaries and call them distance. They look at your caution and call it coldness. But they are judging a coastal tower as if it were a porch lamp. They do not understand that one is made for decoration and the other is made for danger. One exists to be admired up close. The other exists to shine without chasing, from a place most people would not volunteer to stand. Beloved, This is why your strength makes certain people uncomfortable. Not because you are harsh, but because your very existence reminds them that real stability is usually built where denial has already cost too much. And the strangest part is, the proof of that strength is still not most visible in clear weather. And that is where the mystery becomes even more beautiful. Out on Blackwater, this structure is not known by decoration, but by pattern. In daylight, you can see the tower, the railing, the salt on the windows, the pale stain of old spray drying on the stone. But when night closes in, all of that disappears. Then, what matters is the flash. A few seconds of light, then dark. Light again, then pause. Each one has its own timing, its own signature, its own rhythm in the dark. That is how it is recognized when nothing else can be trusted. Chosen one, people know you the same way, by your pattern, not your loudest moment or how much you explain yourself, by how you respond under strain, by how you hold your tone when the air gets heavy, by how your spirit keeps the same honest pulse when everybody else starts flickering. That is why your presence stays in people's minds longer than you think. You may leave a room and still something about you keeps returning to them, not because you entertain them, but because you were consistent enough to be remembered. A real coastal light does not have to shout across the waves, only remain true to its sequence. In the same way, beloved, your integrity has become recognizable. Your timing has become familiar. Your refusal to bend yourself into whatever shape people prefer has created trust they feel before they can describe it. And let me say something tender here. Some people envy what they actually depend on. They speak lightly of steadiness until their own horizon goes blank. Then suddenly the very thing they called too quiet becomes precious. Then suddenly the measured return of that steadfast beam feels like mercy. This is why certain people watch you from a distance. They are trying to understand how someone can remain so internally ordered when so much around them has no order at all. But the deeper truth is this: a pattern only proves itself when visibility is low. Anybody can seem impressive when the coast is obvious, when the air is clear, when the water is calm. The real meaning of that flash is revealed when the fog rolls over everything. And that is where your life starts making sense most people are not prepared for. And that is exactly why clear weather can be so misleading. In the pale wash of morning, with gulls crying overhead and the sea looking harmless, the tower can seem almost excessive. White paint drying in the sun, rust on a hinge, glass catching light. From a distance, it may look like a quiet thing doing nothing at all. Some people pass by a structure like that and think, why is this even here? Why so much stone, so much height, so much care for something that appears unnecessary when the horizon is easy to read? Chosen one, you have lived that misunderstanding. People have looked at your calm seasons and judged your purpose by the wrong conditions. Because in bright daylight, everybody thinks they can navigate. When the water is smooth and the coastline is visible, confidence comes cheap. People trust their own eyes. They lean on instinct. They mistake ease for wisdom. And in those moments, the fixed light can be overlooked. Not because it lost value, but because the environment is temporarily doing some of its work for it. Hear that carefully. Your gifts are often least appreciated when life is simple. Your discernment, your restraint, your quiet authority. These things do not always look impressive when everything is going well. To shallow eyes, you can seem too serious for an easy day, too grounded for a light conversation, too still for a world that worships motion. But the sea has a way of changing its face. A little mist comes in first. Then distance starts to blur. The line between water and sky softens until even strong eyes begin to doubt themselves. That is when the same tower that looked decorative starts becoming essential, just necessary. And beloved, this is what people slowly realize about you. They may not celebrate your wisdom when their path is obvious. They may not honor your steadiness when their emotions are calm. But let uncertainty thicken. Let familiar landmarks disappear. Let confusion settle over the surface. And suddenly, the very traits they once dismissed begin to feel precious. That shift is not imaginary. It happens in human hearts the same way it happens at sea. First with overconfidence, then with haze, and then with the quiet panic that comes when people understand they can no longer trust what used to feel clear. And fog, unlike a storm, does not announce itself. And fog is a different kind of test altogether. A storm at least announces itself. You hear it coming in the wind. You see the waves rise, hear the spray slap the stone, feel the rail go slick under a cold hand. But fog is quieter than that. It rolls in soft. It muffles sound. It blurs distance. It makes the sea and the sky look like they have agreed to hide the line between them. Out there, danger does not always feel dramatic. Sometimes it feels gentle, pale, almost harmless. So this tower matters so much in that kind of weather, not because it fights the fog, but because it keeps speaking through it. Chosen one, this is where your life starts to explain itself in a deeper way. Your strength is not only for obvious crisis, it is also for confusion. For those strange seasons when people cannot tell what is wrong, only that something feels off. Their judgment gets dampened, their direction softens, their certainty turns to mist. And while they are pretending everything is fine, they are straining for something steady. That is why your presence affects people before they admit it. You do not always arrive in the middle of disaster. Sometimes you arrive in the middle of vagueness, and suddenly the room feels clearer. A tower in fog need not chase the vessels. It keeps its place. The lamp turns, the glass glows, the horn sounds when needed. Again and again, it offers orientation to those humble enough to admit they cannot trust their own eyes right now. In the same way, beloved, your clarity has become deeply valuable in places where others are emotionally blurred. You ask the question no one wants to ask. You notice the drift before it becomes damage. You do not get hypnotized by pretty confusion. That alone makes people react to you with a mix of relief and discomfort. Because here is the part many never say out loud. When the coast disappears, the fixed light becomes more than helpful. It becomes a mirror. And not every vessel likes what it realizes when that first clean flash cuts through the white air. And that is the moment many vessels do not enjoy. When the white air thickens and the shore is gone, the lamp does more than offer direction. It reveals position. A clean flash across fog is not flattering. It tells the truth. It shows how near the rocks really are, how far the drift has already carried things, how much confidence was built on poor visibility. The horn, low and steady through damp air, does not comfort by pretending. It comforts by being accurate. Chosen one, this is one of the deepest reasons people react so strongly to you. Your presence has a way of making location undeniable. You do not have to accuse anyone. You do not have to raise your voice. You do not have to corner people with speeches. The tower never argues with the sea. It simply keeps turning, keeps flashing, keep sounding when needed. And somehow, that is enough to make every nearby vessel account for itself. Likewise, beloved, your honesty has a strange power. Around you, people hear their own words more clearly. They notice where they have been vague. They feel where they have been pretending. They become aware of the distance between the course they claim and the course they are actually taking. So, some admire you in silence, while others keep you at arm's length. Both reactions can come from the same source. A steady light is precious when someone wants truth, and inconvenient when someone wants illusion. The same glow that helps one captain correct course can irritate another who hoped to keep drifting without consequence. So, if you have ever wondered why your calm spirit draws respect from some and discomfort from others, look again at the shore in fog. It is not hostility in every case. Sometimes it is exposure. And here is the tender part. Exposure is not punishment. It is mercy before impact. The turning lamp does not shame the vessel for being offline. It gives a chance to adjust before scraping stone. Your life carries that same mercy. You make it harder for people to keep lying to themselves, not because you came to judge them, but because something in you stays clear when the air around them does not. Still, not every ship welcomes a true position reading, and what happens next depends on whether it is humble enough to change course. And that is where another sacred truth rises from the shore. The tower does not change its signal to suit the mood of the vessel. Its flash stays what it is. The pause stays where it belongs. The turn of the lamp, the sweep across wet air, the measured return of light. None of that is random. It cannot afford to be. If that pattern changed every time a nervous deck wanted something softer, quicker, prettier, more flattering, then the whole coast would become harder to trust. A fixed light serves by being legible, not by being agreeable. Chosen one. This reaches right into the center of your life. One reason people quietly study you is because, unlike so many others, you do not rewrite yourself every time pressure enters the room. You have learned, maybe through pain, that inconsistency confuses more than honesty ever could. So you stopped sending mixed signals just to keep everybody comfortable. You stopped dressing up your discernment so no one would call it intense. You stopped speaking one way in peace and another way in panic. In other words, you began to shine without chasing approval. And the strange thing is, the more true you became to your own sequence, the easier it became for others to recognize you. Not everybody liked it, but they knew where you stood. That matters more than most people realize. Out there on open water, a vessel needs no light that is eager to please. It needs one that can be identified without confusion. The one on shore becomes useful because it is faithful to its own order. In the same way, beloved, your boundaries are not a failure of love. They are part of your clarity. Your no has protected the meaning of your yes. Your steadiness has protected people from reading comfort where there should have been caution. Your refusal to bend with every emotional tide has made your presence trustworthy, even to those who once resisted it. This is also why some people pull back when they realize you will not scramble your signal to make their drift easier. They were hoping for fog with your name on it, something soft enough to disappear inside. But instead, they met a clean pattern, a rhythm they could not control. And now a deeper question is hanging in the air. What happens when the light keeps telling the truth and the vessel still refuses to turn? And that question reveals something most people do not understand about a shore light. Its job is not to force obedience. It does not leap off the cliff, seize the wheel, and drag a vessel into safety. It does not abandon its post to chase every drifting shape through the mist. It stays in place. It keeps its order. It offers the warning, the location, the faithful return of light, and then it lets the one on the water decide what to do with what has been revealed. Chosen one, this is where your power has been deeply misunderstood. Some expected you to rescue what was refusing direction. Some expected you to wear yourself thin, trying to convince those committed to confusion. But your assignment was never to become the sea, the deck, and the captain all at once. Your assignment was to remain true enough to be useful. There is a holy restraint in that. A tower that leaves its station stops helping everyone. The moment it tries to become mobile, emotional, reactive, desperate, it stops being reliable. The fog does not need another confused thing moving inside it. It needs one fixed point. Beloved, hear the mercy in that for your own life. You are not failing because you stopped chasing people who keep ignoring the signal. You are not cold because you refused to collapse your boundaries just to keep access to someone's chaos. You are not unloving because you would not dim your clarity to make their drift feel less serious. Sometimes, the most loving thing a fixed light can do is keep shining from the place truth gave it. And yes, that can look passive to people who do not understand how coasts work. They may think movement equals care. They may think exhaustion equals devotion. They may think if you were really good, really kind, really anointed, you would run after every ship until dawn. But that is not wisdom. That is self-erasure. The rocks are still there. The fog is still thick. The lamp must still turn. People watch you so closely, even when they act casual. They want to understand how you carry responsibility without surrendering your center. They want to see how you manage to stay available without becoming absorbable. And the answer becomes even more startling when you realize that some of the strongest lights now keep burning with no one standing beside them at all. And that detail changes everything. Some of these coastal lights keep working even when no one is there to witness the moment. No footsteps on the iron stairs. No keeper trimming a flame by hand. No voice in the lantern room saying, "There, that should do it." The glass still turns. The lamp still pulses through damp night. The mechanism keeps time, while the wind hums around the rail and salt gathers in a thin crust on metal. It shines without chasing, without an audience, without applause. Beloved, if you want to understand one of the deepest reasons people cannot quite figure you out, start here. Much of your power has never depended on being seen in action. That unsettles people more than they admit. Most people are trained to perform their goodness, announce their discipline, display their healing while it is still half-formed. They need witnesses to stay consistent. They need response to stay motivated. But a true shorelight does not wait for admiration before it does its work. It was built to remain faithful in the dark, not photogenic in the daytime. And in the same way, chosen one, some of the strongest things about you happen where nobody claps. Your restraint when you could have reacted. Your prayer when nobody knew you were tired. Your return to truth after disappointment. Your private refusal to become bitter. That unseen steadiness is part of why people study you from a distance. They can feel there is an engine in you that does not run on praise. And when people sense that, They start comparing it to themselves, even if they never say it out loud. They think about how often their mood changes with the room, how easily their standards wobble when attention disappears, how quickly their conviction fades when approval goes quiet. Then they look at you, still giving off a steady glow, still keeping order, still useful in the unseen hours, and something in them is exposed. Not to shame them, but to show them what inner authority actually looks like. So your silence can carry more weight than somebody else's speech. Not because you are trying to impress anyone, but because there is evidence of self-government in the way you remain lit when nobody is watching. And once people realize your consistency is self-sourced, a more uncomfortable question starts rising in them. What in their own life goes dark the moment the room empties? And that question is where your quiet strength starts turning into a mirror. A shorelight standing through midnight does something more than mark danger. It exposes dependency. If a vessel can only hold course when skies are clear, then the trouble was never just the weather. If a lamp only works when someone is standing beside it, then the weakness was never just the night. The turning glass, the timed pulse, the soft mechanical hum inside the lantern room, all of it says the same thing without speaking. Real function does not beg for constant reassurance. Chosen one, this is why your presence unsettles people who built themselves on reaction. Around you, their borrowed confidence starts to feel thin. You have seen this, even if nobody named it. Some people come close to your steadiness and suddenly become fidgety. Their words get slippery, their tone changes. They joke when the moment asks for honesty. They fill silence because the silence near you is not empty. It is like standing near a tower in thick weather and realizing the sound you keep hearing is not noise at all. It is position. That is what your inner authority does. It gives off a kind of measurement, just clear enough that imitation begins to tremble. And beloved, this is why admiration and avoidance can look so similar from a distance. One vessel keeps checking the flash because it wants safety. Another keeps checking the flash because it resents what the flash is proving. Both are watching. Both are being affected. Both have become aware of something fixed outside their mood. That is why people study your choices, your restraint, your timing, your refusal to panic. They are not only noticing behavior, they are trying to understand what powers it. Because most lives are run from the outside in. A compliment lifts them. A delay shakes them. A cold room dims them. A silent phone unsettles them. But the strongest coastal lights do not consult the passing conditions before doing what they were built to do. There is an order inside the structure that keeps the beam faithful through changing air. And once someone realizes that your steadiness comes from within rather than from the crowd, a deeper discomfort rises. They begin to see how much of their own life has been lived waiting for permission. So the fixed light can feel intimidating without doing anything aggressive at all. It does not lean over the water and demand attention. It does not flare wildly to prove a point. It stands there with salt dried on the rail, damp wind moving past the glass, metal humming softly inside its own frame, and somehow that quiet order carries authority. Not the kind that comes from a crowd gathering around it. Authority that exists because the structure knows its function and does not need permission from the weather to fulfill it. Chosen one, people feel that in you. They may call it intensity, but often what they are sensing is self-governance. That kind of steadiness changes the whole shoreline around it. When a true coastal light is present, every nearby vessel has to make a decision in relation to it. Ignore it, trust it, resist it, adjust by it. But no one can honestly say it made no difference. In the same way, beloved, your inner authority shifts people without your trying. Around you, excuses feel thinner, performance feels louder, delay feels less convincing. Not because you are pressuring anyone, but because your life is not asking the room what it is allowed to be. You have learned to stand in truth before applause arrives, before agreement comes, before comfort settles in. And that is rare. Most people want a signal from outside themselves before they move. They wait for the water to approve, for the sky to brighten, for someone else to confirm what they already know. But the steadfast beam does not negotiate with the fog about whether it should turn on. It does not ask the tide if tonight would be a good time to be clear. It simply does what it was built to do. So people study you in silence. They are trying to understand how someone can move from inward conviction instead of outward permission. To them, that kind of freedom feels almost unreachable and deeply desirable. But there is another layer still, because once a structure stops waiting for permission, it also stops living on autopilot. It becomes deliberate. Every sweep of light matters. Every pause has meaning. Every return of the lamp is exact. And that is the part that begins to disturb people most of all, because it reveals how much of their own course was never consciously chosen. And that is the deeper disturbance. A true coastal light does not let anything nearby remain fully unconscious. Every turn of the lamp is deliberate. The glass does not spin at random. The flash does not happen by accident. Even the pause means something. Out over dark water, that kind of precision interrupts drift. A vessel can no longer pretend it is just floating aimlessly with no consequences. Once the pattern is recognized, every choice becomes more visible. Keep the same course. Alter it. Ignore the warning. Respond to it. But after that flash, no one can honestly say they did not know there was something fixed and clear nearby. Chosen one, this is why your presence shakes people awake without you needing to preach at them. You are not disruptive because you are loud. You are disruptive because you are intentional. A tower on the coast does not apologize for being exact. It does not blur its own sequence to make a careless approach feel more comfortable. It remains precise, and that precision exposes how much of the surrounding movement was loose, reactive, and half-conscious. In the same way, beloved, your choices carry a wake-up call. The way you pause before speaking, the way you do not promise what you cannot sustain, the way you refuse to say yes just because silence feels awkward, the way you stay aligned even when nobody is rewarding you for it. All of that presses against the sleepy habits in other people. It makes autopilot feel fragile. And this is why your brilliance can inspire and unsettle at the same time. Some people come near a fixed light and feel relief. Finally, something real. Others feel exposed because they begin to notice how much of their own course was inherited, copied, or chosen out of fear. The same sweep across the water creates gratitude in one vessel and resistance in another. Both reactions are telling the truth. Your life has become a shoreline where unconscious patterns get harder to maintain. Not because you are trying to embarrass anyone, but because clarity makes pretending more difficult. Listen carefully to this part. People often think they are studying your style, your words, your discipline. But what they are actually studying is your level of awareness. They are trying to understand what it feels like to live with that much intention. And once that question gets inside them, another one comes right behind it. If the light is this exact for a reason, then maybe the distance around it was never punishment at all. And that possibility changes the meaning of the distance around the tower. From the water, it can look lonely out there. Wind moving through the rail, spray drying white on stone, a narrow stair curling upward inside a hollow column. Night after night, the lamp turning above dark water while everything living seems to keep its distance. To an untrained eye, that separation can look sad, unnecessary, severe. But a structure like this is not placed apart by mistake. Its distance protects its function. If it were tucked into every warm porch light along the shore, if it were crowded in among 100 smaller lamps, its message would blur. Chosen one, some of your separation has carried that same mercy. You were not always being excluded. In many seasons, you were being preserved. A coastal light must remain clear against the dark. It cannot merge with every glow around it and still be recognized when weather turns. The space around it is part of how it serves. That open air, that exposed rock, that strip of black sea between it and everything familiar, all of that keeps the signal legible. Beloved, let that settle into your spirit. Some of the solitude you resented was not evidence that you were forgotten. It was part of what kept your pattern from being swallowed. It kept your timing clean. It kept your inner order from being constantly rewritten by the noise pressing in from all sides. This is also why people can admire you and misunderstand you at the same time. They see the steadiness, but they do not always see the cost of remaining clear. They notice the calm, but they do not feel the wind that shaped it. They benefit from the steadiness of your presence without understanding how much distance was required to protect it. So some people call you detached, when what they are really witnessing is consecration. They are looking at necessary space and naming it rejection because they do not yet understand what it takes for a light to stay exact. And here is the difficult tenderness in that. A tower does not stand apart because it hates the sea. It stands apart so it can remain useful to it. Once that truth enters your heart, another false idea starts to break apart. The idea that because you are still, you are not doing very much at all. And that false idea has caused many people to miss the real scale of what the lighthouse is doing. From far away, stillness can look like inactivity. The tower does not run along the shore. It does not spray sparks into the sky every minute. It does not make a scene of its usefulness. It stands, it turns, it flashes. It keeps its place on the edge where sea meets stone. To restless eyes, that can appear almost passive. But out on the water, entire decisions are being made because of that quiet presence. Wheels are turning, speed is changing, distances are being judged, courses are being corrected, all because something on the coast stayed faithful to its position. Chosen one. This is one of the most powerful truths about your life. Your influence is often happening in rooms you never entered and in hearts you never had to chase. That is the mystery of hidden impact. A structure rooted on the rock can alter outcomes at great distance without ever moving an inch. It does not need to touch the vessel to change the vessel. It never has to board the deck to affect the direction. The mere fact of being clear, stable, and correctly placed becomes active force. In the same way, beloved, your life has been rearranging things more than you know. People have rethought choices after leaving your presence. They have pulled back from unwise decisions because of something you said lightly, or because of what you refused to participate in. They have remembered your steadiness in moments when their own thinking began to slide. Quiet authority has reach. This is why the world so often underestimates people like you at first. It is trained to worship visible motion. It notices performance, hustle, reaction, noise. but it rarely understands structural influence until conditions get serious. Only then do people realize that not all power looks busy. Some power looks calm, some power looks patient. Some power looks like a steady lamp across black water, doing the same faithful work while everybody else mistakes movement for meaning. Once you understand that, something in you begins to relax. You stop measuring your worth by how many people immediately recognize it. You stop thinking usefulness has to feel dramatic. You stop apologizing for the way your impact travels quietly. And when that apology finally starts leaving your spirit, one last threshold appears. The moment a fixed light no longer feels guilty for being visible. And that is the threshold, beloved. The moment the fixed light stops confusing visibility with vanity. A tower on the coast was never placed there to hide. It was raised to be seen from exactly the place where seeing matters most. The glass is polished for that. The lamp is set high for that. The whole structure is lifted above rock and spray so the flash can travel farther than the stone itself ever could. There is nothing arrogant about that design. It is purpose. And when a coastal light starts apologizing for being visible, it begins to betray the very reason it was built. Chosen one, let that touch the places in you that have felt guilty for standing out simply because you stayed clear. You were not meant to disappear just to make drifting people more comfortable. A shorelight does not lower itself into the fog so no vessel feels exposed. It does not dim the lamp because somebody prefers softer consequences. It remains where it was set, and by remaining there, it gives mercy a real shape. This is what many around you have been trying to understand. They can feel that your clarity is not performance. Your steadiness is not a costume. Your restraint, your timing, even your silence, they come from alignment. That is why people watch you when they think you are not noticing. They are trying to learn what it looks like when a life is arranged around truth instead of appetite, fear, or approval. And yes, there is a cost to that. Wind keeps hitting the same side of the tower. Salt keeps gathering on the same rail. Night keeps returning, and the lamp must keep returning with it. But that repeated faithfulness is what turns structure into trust. The steady willingness to remain useful in the conditions that make other things fold. That is where your quiet authority has been forged, not in being admired, but in being available to purpose again and again. So hear this clearly now. Your assignment was never to chase every vessel, explain yourself to every doubter, or shrink your height so nobody feels convicted by your presence. Your assignment was to stay lit. And once a soul truly accepts that, something sacred begins to happen next. It stops grieving the role it was never called to play. And that release is holy, because the tower was never meant to be the vessel. It was not built to ride every wave, feel every lurch, or panic with every change in current. It was built to stay on the edge, to hold position where rock meets sea, and to offer a clear signal through weather that would confuse anything less grounded. The more a shorelight tries to become what it was never designed to be, the less useful it becomes to everyone around it. Chosen one, let this truth settle deep. You were not called to become every moving thing in other people's storms. You were called to remain rightly placed while the storm revealed who was willing to read the light. That is assignment. A fixed structure serves best when it remembers its nature. Stone does not need to become sailcloth. Lantern glass does not need to become foam. Height does not need to apologize to the tide. Each part keeps its role, and because it does, the whole thing remains trustworthy when the night deepens. In the same way, beloved, peace began to return to you the moment you stopped trying to carry responsibilities that never belonged to your spirit. The moment you stopped mistaking overfunctioning for love. The moment you realized that staying clear can save more than scrambling ever could. And here is where the calling becomes beautiful instead of heavy. When a coastal light accepts its placement, even harsh weather starts serving a purpose. The wind tests it, but also proves it. The fog surrounds it, but also reveals it. The dark does not cancel its meaning. It becomes the very stage where that meaning can finally be seen. This is why some of your hardest seasons have made you more trustworthy, not less. They stripped away everything decorative and left only what could survive repeated weather. People sense that. They may not know how to say it, but they know your strength is not borrowed from easy days. So now the message sharpens. You are not here to chase every ship. You are here to hold your line so faithfully that those meant to respond can find it. That is why your life has been observed, why your timing has been noted, why your steadiness has become a quiet point of reference for people who once overlooked you. And once that truth is fully received, something rises in the spirit that changes everything. Not pride, not performance, permission. And that permission feels like a deep breath in cold night air. The kind that clears your chest and steadies your feet on wet stone. A fixed light no longer wastes strength grieving that it was not made to drift. It no longer envies the vessel, the motion, the noise, the constant changing view. It accepts the cliff, the wind, the narrow lantern room, the repeated sweep across dark water. And in that acceptance, something powerful happens. The whole structure becomes simpler, stronger, more honest. No more confusion about its role. No more shame about its height. No more secret apology for being easier to see in certain weather than anything else around it. Chosen one. This is what begins in you when permission finally settles into place. You stop mourning the versions of yourself that would have made other people more comfortable but less protected. That shift is not small. A beacon with no identity conflict gives a cleaner signal. The glass stays clear. The timing stays exact. The beam does not hesitate before crossing the fog. In the same way, beloved, when you stop trying to be both the warning and the wandering thing being warned, your life gains a new kind of peace. Your words stop over-explaining. Your boundaries stop sounding guilty. Your silence stops feeling like absence and starts feeling like wisdom. People notice that change immediately, even if they never mention it directly. They sense when a life is no longer divided against itself. They sense when someone has stopped negotiating with their own calling. And so this moment is magnetic. Because once a tower accepts its purpose, it does not become harder. It becomes cleaner. The presence sharpens. The usefulness increases. The signal reaches farther because nothing inside is fighting it anymore. Around a structure like that, confusion has less room to hide. Drift has less room to pretend. Delay starts feeling expensive. Some people come closer for exactly that reason. Others keep their distance for exactly that reason. But both feel it. And what they feel next is the part most of them are not prepared to name. The strange moment when your peace stops looking passive and starts looking like authority they wish they had. And that authority is the final blessing. The moment the shore no longer asks the sea to explain why the tower was needed. By then, the weather has done its work. Fog has rubbed against the glass. Wind has leaned on the rail. Salt has dried in thin white lines along the stone. And still, the lamp keeps its order. Still, the turning light crosses the dark water at the same faithful interval. Still, the height holds. Nothing frantic, nothing theatrical. Just a presence so true to its purpose that even the night must arrange itself around it. Chosen one, this is where your spirit comes to rest. You do not have to prove why you were placed where you were placed. You do not have to chase gratitude from every passing vessel. You do not have to descend into confusion just to make other people less uncomfortable with your clarity. You were built for the edge, and the edge was never a mistake. The hard ground beneath you, the lonely seasons, the times you looked unnecessary in calm weather, the hours no one applauded, the pattern only a few could recognize at first, all of it belonged to the making of this kind of life, a useful one. Not a life that flares for attention and vanishes, but one that keeps its witness when visibility drops. Some will bless that. Some will resist it. Some will only understand your value after they have drifted farther than they meant to. But none of that changes the assignment. The lamp still turns. The glass still catches the light. The rock still holds. And here's the image I want to leave with you. Toward morning, when the black water finally softens to slate and the fog thins into ribbons, the tower is still there with dew on the rail and a pale ring of light fading from the lantern room. It outlasted it. A gull settles on the highest bar for a breath. The wind eases, and the sea keeps moving below the stone without taking the stone with it. If this met you in a real place tonight, stay close to the channel. Leave a word beneath it, and let me know what part stayed with you after the water went quiet.